in 1995, he turned to me, knowing that I was an engineer that deals with water, and he said, David, when you come to Kenya, we need to have you bring safe water to our people, because we'll lose a whole village to contaminated water at a time. Well, in 2005, when we came, it was an international conference in Kenya, and that was our first of 20 trips now. So God has led us into a ministry there, and we're going to be sharing about that. But I think before we get into this story that we're going to talk about today, the victory story, you need to know what we're confronted with in advance. About 8 years ago, there was an election in Kenya, a presidential election, and there were over 2,000 people killed in the violence that resulted from that election. Our scheduling this particular trip was we wanted to be back in time to go to CFO, and we wanted to go after the election. And indeed, they did hold the election, and it was peaceful, but it was a very contested result. They turned it over to their Supreme Court to decide who was the victor. And it turns out the Supreme Court decided not to make the announcement until 2 days after we got to Kenya. And so we were full of anxiety in the sense of what to anticipate. Once they made the announcement, it was peaceful. And then they had the inauguration of the president, and that went peacefully. And in all of that, they shut down schools. And our purpose of being there was to meet with schools and school children and teachers. And shortly after the inauguration of the president, Queen Elizabeth II died. And Kenya had been, until 1964, a
Commonwealth?
part of the Commonwealth.
Yes.
And as a result, there's a lot of loyalty to the Queen, so the school shut down again. And then she was finally buried, things got back to normal. Except at the end of the next week, school was scheduled to shut down. So we had some very major issues to deal with. That was complicated by the fact we got on Air France and flew to Kenya, and our connection between the flights was about half an hour, and they had to take us by bus to an area to exit security, come through security again, and we were going by wheelchair from one place to another, and that wheelchair made them responsible for us getting on the airplane. We got to the plane, and the plane was sitting there, and the gate was closed. They said, you can't go. And we turned around, and we're wheeling back, wondering what was going to happen. And our girl, who was Eleanor, pushing Eleanor, turned around and said, I just got a message saying come back to the gate. So we went back to the gate, and it turns out they rewrote our tickets, put us on the airplane. We had 5 checked baggages, 4 bags, and 1 wheelchair. We had 2 carry-ons, but they were full of electronics. No clothes in the carry-ons. Don't travel them. We got on the airplane, arrived in Kenya, and the only thing that arrived with us was a wheelchair. So I had with me a drone because I wanted to take pictures of these facilities we'll be seeing from the air. Before bringing the drone on, I called the council's office in Los Angeles. And the council's office says, sure, there's no problem. You can bring your drone in. We passed security at the customs office. They said, you've got a drone in there. I said, yes, I got approval to do that. Well, you may think you have approval, but it's against the law. We're confiscating it.
Mm.
You can have it the day you leave the country. They said that, but they didn't give me any instructions on how to get it back from me. And so I spent the next day, which would normally be taking driving. We'd normally drive 9 hours the first day after coming to Kenya. I spent a good half the next day trying to get that drone cleared, trying to get a permit to operate the drone, and without approval. So we drove halfway to Kenya, to Kakamega, stayed in a hotel we've never stayed in before. Continued the next day and arrived, and had to rewrite our whole schedule for what we were doing in the next 3 weeks.
Well, the problem was, all those suitcases had the ministry supplies for all the preschools and all the academy and all the gifts, and no clothes. So we had 6 days with no clothes. I gotta be really thankful that on the day I was supposed to speak, for the dedication of the academy's new, the teachers' workroom and the patio, the dining patio, they gave us clothes to wear. So at least I was praising the Lord. We had ability to have showers, and I now had a clean outfit to arrive to be able to talk that day. So I didn't have to go in my judgy greens and my dirty clothes, but inside I was clean.
You know, by then we were clearly aware that we were under a satanic attack. Yeah. And so that just turned us on because it made us rejoice. Because we know that when Satan is worried, good things are going to happen. Right. And the good part is what you're going to be seeing up here. But it just was really exciting to see these things happening. I got diarrhea for 3 days. She got the diarrhea for 16 days. Before we left, her heartbeat was 177. We had to take her into the doctor's office to get checked out.
It was just Satan trying to stop us from doing the good stuff.
Since we came back, her heartbeat went up to 188. We've had her in the hospital a day or so since coming back. But that doesn't stop us from rejoicing because good things happen. And so let's talk about what's happened.
You want to turn some lights off? You can see your pictures better?
Yes.
I can do
There's a light switch over in that corner.
And there's a light switch someplace over here.
Actually, I think all of them.
Okay, so you can see better. Okay, hold
Okay,
on.
that's the Blessed Academy. And everything you see is our structures in these photographs have over the years been built as a result of donors like you who have provided the funds to proceed. Blessed Academy, there was a church in
Freeport, Illinois.
Freeport, Illinois that provided us with some money to drill water wells with. They also provided us money to buy land to build a school on. That's the land that this school has been built on. Blessed Academy is a grade school for 250 children.
Out of the 250 children, there are 54 that are sponsored from people from the United States and Canada.
Okay. This is what this grade school looked like last year. But our purpose for going this year is that we have added a room here for a teacher's workroom. And we've added a shelter over this area so the children can sit outside in the rain and in the sun and eat their lunches. And if it got too hot inside the classrooms, the teachers can even move their classrooms outside. The purpose of it being there was primarily to dedicate this teacher's lounge.
This is one of the miracles. We've been praying, the staff over there have been meeting in a very tiny room. It just crammed them in and not very much room. And they asked us for a couple years ago that we could have a workroom. Well, we didn't have the money. We just depended on it. And all of a sudden, one of our donors contacted us, and my mom and dad just died, and they have a memorial fund, and we want to give you $20,000. And you can use it anywhere you want. And I go, woohoo! We have an answer!
Wayne and Diana are on our board. as well as our Ron and Sandy case, and they've been CFOs as well. And when things like this happen, we give them a call, and it gets everybody all excited. Oops. Well, this is the continuation of that building. That building has grades 1 through 5. And over on this other side are grades 6, 7, 8, a computer lab.
And that's our water,
Dining area.
Nice shelter.
Yeah, this is the dining area.
that was the area
This
that
is the
was
kitchen.
added.
This is a water tank. We've got 2 water wells here. So here's Eleanor cutting the ribbon for the dedication.
See the nice clothes they gave me?
Yeah. Red, white, and blue, too.
And I have them to match too.
Oh,
In each room, which has been dedicated in the name of a family member, the family provides a photograph of the family members, which will be hanging over here. And they choose a scripture. In this case, they wanted a rainbow painted on the wall. So this is in honor of the parents of these donors. And on one side of the room, there's lockers. Each teacher has their own locker. There's work tables. Down near the end where we're taking the photograph from, there's places for computers and for people to sit in their workspaces at a counter. And here we're standing outside of the dining area, being ready to cut the ribbon for it.
And there we're sitting down. Of course, the kids had to join us. And of course, I had to tell them a story. What would you do if you have a whole bunch of little kids around you but tell a story?
This is the dining area. And it really is very, very functional.
beautiful.
All the other classrooms are off of it.
The classes in this area are 6, 7. 7 is in the corner. 8, and then the computer lab is over here. We've got 9 computer stations in the computer lab. When we go out to the field, we're often greeted by the parents.
This is a God's Children's preschool. This is a preschool that is run by an older couple that we joined and supported. And we also have 3 orphans living here. So every month they get extra money, so they can, besides the regular amount of money, so they can take care of the
Ron and
orphans.
Sandy case.
There's Ron and Sandy there.
Yeah.
That was a previous trip, but David thought that was a good trip.
I don't have a whole lot of fresh movies, so I thought I'd give you a little bit of live action.
I love it. Great energy.
This is walking out to a school, preschool.
Mary Christie
You can't
preschool.
drive to right now. The people out there say, we don't have a church anywhere nearby. Is it possible you can build a church for us? And they also have a spring that people come to. But to go to the spring, it's like going from the corner of that peak of the roof down here, filling with water, and going back up a very steep
It's
pathway.
like this going up
slippery.
and down the path.
Carrying the pail of water on your head. And it's very dangerous. So instead, we provided a water well at the top of the hill.
This water well was paid for by a family from Canada. And there's the new church.
And in this particular photograph, the church is here. The caretaker's house is there. There's a school classroom over here. And the rest of the land is used as a farm. And we raise beans, we raise corn, we raise grains of different sorts on there. And on that piece of property are some fish farms that we're no longer raising fish in because the local varmints It
8 of
decided
them.
to catch
We
all
had
the
a
fish.
fishing project, but all the varmints found out we had fish, so they
Some sort of
dived in
animal
and ate
put the
them
fence
up.
out. And this is the pastor for that church.
Going backwards.
And the gentleman here is John Amala. And he's been the national CFO here in the U.S. a couple of times. And he is our key person in that area. But these are the children, and Eleanor taught them a song. Let's see. Yes, Jesus loves
Yes,
you.
yes, yes, love me.
In sign language. And here I gave a sermon on what it takes to accept Jesus Christ. And you don't just live a good life. You accept and receive him as Lord and Savior. And I gave that sermon twice. And Eleanor then gave her story sermons as well.
Oh, yeah. He put this really glamorous picture of me with my mouth wide open. Have you noticed that?
But these three men came to the Lord out of that sermon.
Thank you, Lord. Keep going.
Okay, this is the congregation of the church.
Now, what they were given $2,500, so they built the metal part and the thing, and now they're saving their money so they can put a concrete floor in it, and then they'll put windows in it. But I was very impressed because they have 2 pastors there, and what I was impressed that they're in charge of the well, and they have already set aside for the future repair of the well, $30, which you have to understand, $30 over there is a big hunk of money. I think our preschool teachers get paid about $25 a month. So they are really diligent, they're excited, and at this site, they said, can we please have a Bible literacy program here too? Because we want our people to learn how to read and write, and that will bring the people in, and when they hear that and learn the Bible and literacy, they want to come to Jesus too.
We're ready now to send them supplies.
I think I need about $500 will start the program.
How to provide. This is their congregation. The larger group that was just shown included visitors because dignitaries had been out of town. And so this is just the people in that congregation itself. We've shared over the last several years the fact that there's been a gentleman come to Christ out of a Muslim background. And he has brought others to Christ, particularly his family members to start off with. And they convinced us to buy property in the area and build a church. And this is the church we built in their area. Well, we later on put a well in here because there's a stream about half a mile away that one of the parents sent their child, a 5-year-old child, to the stream to bring some water home. And he got bit by a black mama's snake. And that's a very, very poisonous snake. And he survived. And I shared that with the gentleman from our Bible study back in the desert, and came out of that meeting with $8,000, which is enough to drill a well. So immediately drilled a well. Well, now, so we've got a church with a well right next to it, and many Muslim people coming to the well to get water. And so we're
And then we have the
out
pastor's
in
house.
an area where there aren't many Christians living out there, so we built a house so the pastor would have a house nearby. And interesting enough, the donor said, I want you to have a front porch on it. You can see the porch over here. I want you to make or buy 6 rocking chairs for them. I want to be able to have people come up and visit with the pastor. And this gentleman who was the donor had been a missionary himself at one point, and at that time, it was shortly before he died, was a multimillionaire. And so he said, 6 rocking chairs. So I told our people go buy 6 rocking chairs. They said, what's a rocking chair?
Right.
And so I sent them a picture of what a rocking chair is. And they said, there are no rocking chairs anywhere in Kenya. We've checked all in Nairobi, we checked everywhere. And someone says, we can make one. And so we hired someone to make them. But instead of them going on the internet and find out what a rocking chair is like, they built a dining room table chair and just stuck it on rockers. Well, that's going to lead too far forward. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And we saw them, and I said, that doesn't work. I took them to a carpenter, told them how I wanted it beveled and changed, and now we have the only 6 rocking chairs in all of Kenya. That's the pastor's house. At that church is where they've held the seminar that Eleanor does over the last several years. And so they really like to decorate.
You have to understand that I had been sick before this point. I did the first teaching, trying to stand up. I was teaching on the 10 Commandments, and I was having a hard time. I did my teaching. But the next morning, God said to me, why don't you sit down, and why don't you invite people into your living room to talk about Jesus? So what we did is, I had my translator next to me, and we moved the pulpit away, and we sat down, and I said, hi, welcome to my living room. I just want to talk to you about Jesus. And I did teaching that day on mercy. And what's exciting to hear, besides teaching the 2 Bible stories that teach about God's mercy, I got to teach about my dear friend Mary Mala, who was the pastor's wife, who spent the day with me when I was so desperately sick, cleaning me up and making me well, and she showed the mercy of Christ. And then the last thing I had, before I left for Kenya, I was church in the desert, and one of the old gentlemen was going around giving everybody a fan, like the ones that come from China, the little cheap ones. Mm-hmm. And he says, oh, I want all the ladies to be cool in church today. Well, I said, you know what? I told him, I'm going to take that to Kenya with me. I don't know how I'm going to use it. And so I decided I need to I can use this to talk about the mercies of Christ. And so I did the teaching on, finished talking about how Mary blessed me and she has showed the mercy of Christ. And then I told about this gentleman giving out the fans at church. And I opened up the fan and I fanned myself and told him that he was blessing all of us. He was showing the mercy of Christ to us. And then I gave the fan to my translator. Well, she'd never seen a fan before, and she was trying to open it up, and it took several times to teach her how you slide it open. And so that was interesting to introduce a fan to Kenya. But you know, God can use anything. You know, being sick and so miserable and terrible off, I couldn't even walk. I can tell you, God used it. So any opportunity that you're going through, say, all right, God, how can I use this? Because God used it to teach mercy.
Wow.
Anyway, they enjoyed her talks, but by now, they now split the talks up, and local pastors do more of the preaching than she does. And so we have made the transition where those programs are going to continue.
Yeah, now they're doing.
We're likely not going to come in better.
And they love to sing and they love to dance. So and they're not singing in English. I'm going to tell you, singing in Swahili. So I don't know the words, but I'm sure it's all praising God.
Well, they sing in English too.
At CFO they do.
Look, you can see it's quite crowded, and this is both local people and people from outside the area, because we have probably 20 pastors come to learn at these seminars as well. So it's serious teaching that they do.
Okay.
I shared with you that we use the church as a church, but I failed to share with you that we realized that that building's not being used during the weekday. So we met with our local people over there, and they said, none of the people out here know how to read. Many never had school at all. And so we opened up classes for literacy and for Bible study. We thought we'd have 2 classes with 20 people each. Well, 70 people signed up for both classes. Wow. And they not only wanted the class once a week, they wanted it 5 days a week. And so you got mornings literacy and afternoons Bible study. And all 70 people stayed for all of it.
And now we have 130 people in the program.
One lady has been with us for several years in the program, has learned to read well enough. She chose to run, to be on the board of elders for a local village. She beat out 5 men because she could read and they couldn't. And so it's just changing lives. Well, we looked at the church being used on Sunday for church, on weekdays for school. What about Saturday? Well, the people were sharing with us that they need a medical center out there because they're so far out that a person will die just trying to go in for medical care. And so we met with the local chief of the community, which is an elected position like a mayor. And he said, I will support you by providing doctors and equipment if you'll provide a place for them to meet. So on Saturdays, the church is used as a medical clinic. This is the group that attended the...
This is the congregation. The day that we had Holy Communion out there, of course the kids weren't interested. They were dancing around and having fun outside during the talks because we were boring. And, but when it came to Holy Communion, they found out that we had cookies because we couldn't find crackers over there, but we can find biscuits or crackers. So when the service was all over, Pastor Mary Mala handed out all the leftovers, and they were the happiest kids in town because they ate all leftovers.
Okay, we have 2 groups of widows, each of them with about 80 people. In each group of widows, we provide to them $8 worth of seed and fertilizer, and the seed is a maize or corn seed. They plant twice a year because there are 2 growing seasons in Kenya, because it's right on the equator. And so at harvest time, we have them bring 10% of their crops. There's a bag behind James. This is our driver. He's been our driver for our trips. There are 3 bags of corn that they brought in that we'll have ground up. And in the past, we've taken the corn and used it to feed the children in the school. But what we've done most recently since the COVID, during the COVID, we had to shut down the schools. We paid our teachers 80% because we wanted them there, wanted them well. We sent them out to check to see how the families were doing. They were finding that families with our children were not eating for 2 or 3 days at a time. So we started sending money that would have otherwise gone for teaching, for feeding. For a while, we were feeding 1,000 people a week.
And I can tell you that we're not a big ministry. We were down to like this in the accounts. And all of a sudden, God would send us more money, and we could buy more food. Well, when it came to the end of the feeding time, that money stopped coming in. And you know what? God takes care of his kids.
So now we take this grain, we grind it up, and the widows choose other widows that either have no land to grow a crop on or are physically unable to grow a crop. And they take it out to them and feed them. So it's a program where Kenyan widows are feeding Kenyan widows of the fruit of their harvest.
right about this.
Well, my problem is, I left this on with a battery on it.
Oh,
It's a little bit weak.
okay.
Okay,
Well,
so this is the widows group at one of these two churches.
yeah, we had a couple of meetings out there, that's yours. Keep going, honey. We got lunch faster. That's the day, this is the day that blew my mind away. You know, when I was a child, I prayed that I'd be able to go to someplace else and tell people about Jesus. And when I stood there and they asked me, all these widows, to pray for them, God, see what you've done. All these people have come to Christ because you sent me there and you've given the I couldn't believe it. I was just, they prayed for us. So I stood up and prayed for them and asked on God to bless. But you can see what God can do when you just step out and do what He calls you to do. I'm not responsible for this. God, look what you've done. Oh, that's because I was with kids. They all wanted their picture taken.
This is our literacy group. And I've got a video of them planted in here. I'm not sure it's going to. This old man is reading to us. Listen to the audience as he gets to the bottom. They got cheering as they got closer. The man was in his 80s, had never learned how to read and write. Typically, they don't even know coins. They'll go to buy something, they'll just hand you a fistful of coins, and you pick out what you
They
want.
didn't even know how to count.
They now know how to deal with money. They know how to read. And they're learning how to read Swahili as well as English.
They've added English now. They used to be just Swahili. Okay. Well, moving on. We've got so much to show you because God's so wonderful.
Now, the classes for literacy and Bible are ongoing, and we've got people who want to come into it. So Bernard, our original Muslim gentleman who's now, his name was Muhammad, now he goes by Bernard, said we need a class. I have a group of young men that I'm wanting to teach, and they want Bibles. And he said, what are we going to call them? We're going to call them seekers. Well, I thought they were all younger people, but frankly, there was a bunch of older people in this group. But this is the day that we met with seekers.
Oh, they gave me a hat, so it was during the time of the Queen's funeral, so they gave me a hat so I could look like the Queen. And notice the gentleman here with the white cap. He joined this class because he could see that the Bible literacy class was changing the community. There was a lot of drunkenness, there was a lot of abuse going on, women abuse, but the whole community is now changing. And he noticed that.
He's a Muslim leader.
And he decided, so he joined the Seekers class. And he is a Muslim imam. That's like a pastor. And he's there. It was very interesting. While we were there, we did pray for several people to read. One Muslim gentleman read Christ, and one older gentleman who wants to come back to Christ. He was an alcoholic an alcohol, and he's had to come and see why all these people were getting changed. And it was very interesting when he looked at me and said, well, if I see this happening, then maybe I should accept Jesus. And I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I'm going, well, God, you're going to have to do that because I sure can't do it.
Here we're praying for one of the men in that group who wanted to receive Jesus. And
Put your mic up.
another man came forth out of that same group, said, I want to receive Jesus too. And so here he's been praying for to receive Jesus.
Okay, Tanya, go on.
Okay, this is our sewing group. We have a sewing program where we have equipped the classroom, we provide a teacher, and we do 6 or 8
We
ladies
do
at a
6
time.
ladies at a time. They come in to learn how to sew. Then after that time, about every 6 months, we have a graduation. And for $210, we buy a sewing machine and we give them cash to start their business. And so, therefore, it's all related to donations, because I'm not rich, God's rich, so he provides everything. And so after that time, they graduate, and then they have an opportunity to earn money to feed their family and pay school fees. And we had several ladies when we were here gave testimonies about how they've been in the program and how their lives have changed because they had a chance to run a small business. There are treadle machines, there's no electricity, but they have a chance to be able to feed their families now.
Treadle sewing machines. So here the sewing machines are being presented. Here are 4 of the 6 ladies.
It was my price has gone up because of inflation. It's $210 now.
Oh my God.
This is a meeting. The gentleman here had been chief last time we were in 2019 for the community. This gentleman was his assistant. This gentleman is now the chief, and the lady next to him is the assistant chief. So here we're meeting with political people saying, okay, if you provide the land and the building and the set up a medical center, we'll provide a water supply for you. And so we're negotiating those kinds of things. Well, at this particular meeting, they turned to us and said, we understand you've got a real successful sewing program. Can you help us set up a sewing program here?
Well, there's no room. But I was sitting there listening to this conversation, and the Lord gave me an idea. He says, you've been building that beautiful elementary school next door. It's got lots of rooms in it. I saw how nice did. It's a public school. If you could get me a room, how many sewing machines would you like? Now, you'd have to pay for the teacher, because I'm not taking on another project. I have to pay for the teacher, and you'd have to have the room. You'd have to support the program. But if I got your sewing machines, how many do you want? And they started talking to themselves. How about 20? Okay.
Now, we're not going to provide sewing machines to the graduates.
But you know what? When I got home to talk to one of my dear friends in Spokane, Washington, she said, well, how many sewing machines you want? Well, 10. They asked for 20. Well, I'll pay for the 20. And you know what? But I'm not going to do anything until I get a legal document from them that they have to make sure that they've got me a room, they're going to pay for a teacher, they're going to pay for the supplies, and then I will pay, I'll buy starting amount and see how they're I'm not giving them 20 right off. They need to show me that they can do what they say they're going to do. So, can you imagine God's providing? Woo,
It's
what a
really
God.
interesting. God's really made some opportunities for us to meet people. The person who was at one time the Minister of Finance for the country, we met. We met the gentleman who had run in the contest to be president and ended up made prime minister. And at one point we met the man who is now our current president. So God's opened some doors that just are incredible. And it's not because of us, it's because of Jesus. Okay, this is our same group outside with former chief, current chief, and current assistant chief.
There's the chief, and there's a lady chief in there too, with her nice uniform.
Nice.
This is a local high school, one of several that our graduates from our school go to. And people have said, why don't you set up a high school? It takes money, it takes land, it takes time, and we're getting old. But what we've done is we've met with the management of the local high school. And in this case, the principal and his key staff members. And we provided them with a water well. And they've said we could use computers and computer stations because we've got this brand new building with nothing to put in it.
But you have to understand that this well was provided by many donors. Some would send $200, some $50, some a couple of thousand. So we put it all together because it costs about $8,500 to do a well.
Okay, so we came out and had a presentation ceremony and dedication ceremony for the well. And then they held a ceremony inside during which they had different talks and made a presentation. And that's what I want to show you here.
This is the day I was laying very sick in bed. David was out doing this wonderful stuff. And they gave us gifts. We couldn't believe it. Somebody had come the day before where we were doing a dedication at the schools for the new teachers lounge and stuff, and took our pictures. We never realized it. Oh, honey, it just lost water all over the floor.
How many years have you been doing this?
What?
How many years have you been doing this?
Since 2005.
So are they drawn or
Yes.
photographs?
No, these are not photographs.
No,
They're pencil, right?
those are are they pencil?
Isn't that amazing?
That's amazing work.
What a piece of artwork.
Really?
I'm sorry, sweetie. David, be careful. There's water on the floor, sweetheart.
Those are fabulous.
That's life, honey. Just one. Thank you for being a blessing. Thank you, sugar.
What a nice way to show appreciation.
Yes, and wasn't that a beautiful gift?
Do you know
We received other gifts too. We get chickens. Well, of course, we leave them behind. We get eggs, but we always give them to the schools to feed kids. Anyway,
That's awesome.
Okay, this is CFO.
we had a CFO day.
And if you can read it.
That's Jackie right there.
Jackie.
They have a
CFO
they have a
and
flip out
retreat.
card to tell you each thing they're
2022.
doing.
And they're in
Prayer
prayer.
groups, of course. Rhythms.
And rhythms. Okay, then the ladies at the other widows group did an artwork that tells about what Eleanor and I do with Kenya.
Someone hand painted this for us.
Literacy, build churches, water wells,
Wow,
build a school.
wow, what a treasure. Beautiful.
While the last picture's up, I've got to tell you about a mini miracle. Because you gotta understand, God knows already what the needs are. Well, I met on the day we went out to the Mama Elena preschool, I met the lady who was the cook at that school, and she was a young lady, and Pastor John Amal had hired her to be the cook there. And the next Sunday, we went to church at Pastor John Amal's church, and at the end of the service, Pastor Mary says, I want you to sit down here, and people are going to come up and they're going to ask for prayer. So we did that, sat down for prayer, and different people came up and we prayed about different things. And this lady who was the cook at the Mama Elena preschool, she came on up and sat down, and she brought us her daughter. And she said, my daughter has a tumor in her nose, and we don't have any funds to do anything about it. I said, okay. Well, I said, I think we can do something about that. So I talked to Mary, who's sort of in charge, and she knows how to do everything gets done. And so I said, Mary, this girl, a lady has this little girl, and she's got a problem. So we need to solve it. So why don't you have her go in and find out what we need and how soon we can get her some medical insurance. And
Medical insurance in Kenya.
it's
Costs
$60 for the year, but it's no good for 2 months. So it's 2 months later. So we said, well, okay. The doctor said, well, I need $20 for medicine, and then it's going to cost $60 for the medical insurance. Well, I've got to tell you, something happened to me just before I left for Kenya. A lady sent me a check, and she said, this is $80 to take care of a kid.
Oh my God.
$80 took care of a kid. So God already knew the need. God handles. He's a God of miracles. Praise the Lord.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's the show.
There was a lot of difficult times, but there was a lot of glorious time and real joy came out of this.